to order. If you'd all please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Mr. Raymer.
Present.
Mr. Bucher.
Here.
Mr. Brubaker.
Here.
Mr. Espacet.
Here.
Mr. Shaw.
Here.
I believe Mr. Hensley will be joining us. I'm not sure exactly when. Dave Turflinger's here and Superintendent Whelan.
Here.
I don't see any patrons. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on a second. Additions or deletions?
I'm recommending we delete 3.2, which is the transfer to rainy day fund for 2022. I was hoping to replace the money that we moved out of there to purchase the property next door, but I don't think that's a good idea at this point. So.
Board, any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, we'll move forward. If I can get a motion to approve the agenda with one deletion, which would be 3.2.
So moved.
Mr. Brubaker and Mr. Raymer. Roll call vote. Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Bucher?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Espacet?
Yep.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Hearing of patrons. Randy, you got anything you want to say? No. Okay. At this time, I turn it over to Oscar to kind of give the board a summary of why we're here to approve this adjusted budget.
Thank you, Board President, board members, Superintendent. First and foremost, thank you all for being here right before the holidays. The resolution you have in front of you is a result of a couple of things. This board wanted to keep the 2021 tax rate as close to that rate as possible without going over it. As you may remember, the 2023 assessed valuation came up significantly higher. That allowed to issue a second bond. Initially, we had requested a certain amount of dollars to be allocated to the 2023 budget. And in the process, there was human error, and those numbers did not get input into the budget. Now, we were supposed to correct those numbers at your last board meeting. During an internal meeting that we had with the superintendent and the board president, we discovered that the overall tax rate was also entered incorrect. To summarize, both the debt service and the operating levy were both entered with the wrong assessed valuation. That resulted in a 15% reduction. I'm sorry. So what we are doing today is we have been working with DLGF to enter the right numbers to allow you to get back to the tax rate that you had planned. Now, this is still a tax reduction from 2021 by about 4 cents. The reason why I'm taking pause is because I can hear myself, so it confuses me. So, all right, so the resolution in front of you will bring back the tax rate to what we had planned. The levy will cover all of your debt service for the bonds. And it will bring your operating levy by the 5% increase of which you're allowed, rather than reducing it by 15%. Now, the DLGF this is pretty routine for them. You know, there's about 10 other schools going through this process right now. And they do impose a penalty. And it is the lower of 5% of the amount or $100,000 max. This will result in roughly $1 million more that you were not actually going to be receiving. So it's actually completely worth doing this. The secondary reason is, for your operating levy, you can only grow by the 6-year non-farm tax income, which is roughly between 5 and 6% average. So if you were to drop the rate by that 15%, it will take you years to get back to the level that you had to get back to. So this is actually a pretty critical thing to get done. With that, I know I tossed a lot at you, a lot of numbers. So I'll entertain any questions before you take a vote.
Okay, just for clarification, board, if you got your computers up, there's 2 documents under this. The one on the right-hand side, if you open it, shows the debt service at 53 cents, which is what we've said all along to keep the tax rate level. And the operations is 0.4851, which brings us to a total of $1.0151 per $100 of assessed evaluation going forward. And that's with the correction. So anybody got any questions for Oscar? Superintendent Whelan?
Nope.
One final comment, Board President.
Sure, go ahead,
In
Oscar.
2021, you were roughly 105 cents. So this is still a tax reduction from your overall plan. That's all I have.
Okay. Muriel, do you have anything to add?
I would just say next month we will be working with DLGF to do an additional appropriation on your budget for the operations fund, but we can talk about that next month. But the state is aware and they're on board with that plan. So we will be drafting something next month regarding the budget for the operations fund. But the most important thing at this time was that the levies are correct. So that's what we're doing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, at this point, we need a motion.
I motion.
Motion to approve it?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer made a motion to approve the ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Bucher, second. Okay. Any additional comments and or questions?
I just want to thank everybody who worked hard to fix this. It is, I mean, this would have been a huge mistake that would have taken a long time to account for. So especially Oscar, Mariel, Randy Libby, our representative down at the DLGF. They've all worked really hard to help to rectify this situation, and there's a couple things we need to do in January, but at least we're capturing all the money right now, which is the most important thing. So thank you to all those people.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Bucher?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Oscar and Mariel.
Thank you all, and you guys all have a good holiday.
Same to you. Thanks for all the extra efforts.
Thank you, everyone. Hey, Kyle, can you scan that and email me that, and I'll upload it for you this evening?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Thanks
just
again.
shoot me an email when you have that.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe.
Yeah, have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Okay, 3.2 has been deleted. 3.3, resolution to transfer from the education fund to the operations fund.
Okay, so if you remember correctly, I mean, we've talked about this for a while. Originally, the amount of money being transferred from education to operations was between 7 and 8%. We know that as a state, they recommend that we stay below 15%. There were some times in the past that we were well over that, but at the same time, as you've seen from our operations, that that cash balance has gone down considerably. And so, we had been talking about making an additional transfer from education to operations. Also, if you'll remember, when we approved this 2023 budget, the language that we used was up to 14%. And so that's where that 700,000 comes from, is if we use that same idea of up to 14%, then that would not exceed the 700,000. It won't be that amount, but there's a payroll that we're still doing, and there's also some additional bills that we're still paying, and so I want to see where that is before we determine what that amount is. So.
Does this have to be done by the end of the year?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of up to 14%, not exceeding 700,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Esposito, second. Discussion?
Muriel talked about some additional transfers start of the year. Is that going to come out of these funds?
It's actually an additional appropriation, and so the money's not actually being transferred, and that's one of the things I want to make sure that we do is bring some people in here who can speak a little bit more to that. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but even if there's money in that operations fund, unless the board appropriates it, we can't spend it. So, even if there's if we move money over and there's a $350,000 cash balance in there, unless the board then says, here's, we're approving that appropriation, then we can't do anything. So where it gets a little confusing is the amount that we just approved as far as the property tax piece, that's only a portion of what goes into operations. And so right now, what is appropriated, what you guys have approved to spend in operations, is the exact same amount as property taxes. So we can't spend any more than that 2.3 million, even though our budget is about 2.9 million. In that there's additional revenue that comes in, and also that transfer from education over to operations. Right now, we're not accounting for any of that. We're basically saying we're only going to spend property taxes and no more in the operations account. So in January, we'll need to come back and look at the difference between the property tax piece and where we need to be based on our budget, and approve that spending. Does that make sense? So really, the big thing is we just need to make sure that our accounts are positive at the end of a calendar year. That's like the big challenge or goal. So
You mean balanced?
the balance, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how much of the 700,000, looking at the form that Randy uses, how much of that can you account for right now? I mean, how much is, we already know we're in the red here, I'm just gonna pick a number, 300,000. Do we have that form so that we know where we're over in the 300,000? And what's the cushion to get to the end of the year?
I don't think I'm understanding the question.
Well, you said 700,000, the 700,000 is the max,
Yes.
okay? And you sent us all that form that Randy Libby uses for the board to approve these transfers. And so where are we at right now? How much are we in the hole before the last payroll with the bills that are coming due? Where?
Okay. At the end of November, that account, let me look at our.
Dave, are you asking what he expects to actually transfer, since it probably won't be the full 700? Is that your question?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we have an idea, you know, I mean, if bus fuel's 100,000 short, okay, we know we gotta make that. Is there, you know?
Well, the overall operations fund, at the end of November was negative 1.1 million. And so we were still getting money from property taxes, but, you know, we obviously then had additional expenses for the month of December. And so, you know, where we are at the end of December, like I said, we have a payroll that we're still doing, and then the end of the year bills that we're still doing. And that's part of it. We have to make all of those expenses, and you know, some of it is due right at the end of the month, and that's why normally we'd already have that money in because we would have allocated up to 14%, but since we were only at 7%, that's why we kept getting further and further into the hole. So, in my email earlier, based on the numbers we had run, my guess is, unless there's unexpected costs that we are going to have, it'll probably be around 400,000 of that potential 700,000. But if we don't have enough to cover the negative, then that account finishes in the negative, which isn't good. And, you know, it's also one of those indicators that, you know, the state uses as far as, you know, the accounts dropping or increasing. So we want to try to finish it similar to where we started last year, is where we're trying to get to. So.
Right, and my point is just, you know, giving us an idea, because, you know, DUAB's already been here. We don't need to be waving any red flags at them and transferring 700 if we only need 500. Is, you know.
And I've talked to them.
Yeah, and what was their recommendation?
It basically tried to end where we started. That was, so this will more than cover what that is, and that's what I'm saying, what I think it's going to be, but I don't want to limit it to that, because then if something comes up, okay, we're having another board meeting to talk about another transfer, so.
Does that is this going to include the potential fine, or does that come out of next year?
That's next year's stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Mike Hensley just joined us at 5:35. Note in the record, Randy. We have a motion and a second on the table. Some discussion about going to, did you say 14 or 14 and a half?
14.
14% transfer from education to operations, which is not to exceed 700,000. We'll take a few minute recess here and let you.
No, that's all right. I'm up with it.
Okay. All right. So, any other questions, comments? Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Esposette?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw? Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Bucher?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Hensley?
Yep.
And I'm going to abstain, so. With that. to 3.4, budget transfer resolution.
So this was the one that got tabled last meeting, and we did make some adjustments to it. Basically, after the school year or the calendar year is over with, we need to look at all of the funds and make sure that they are not in the negative. And so, you know, what this is going to do is allow us to make the transfers within you know, the minor categories or the classifications, and then bring a transfer approval recommendation to the board in January, hopefully in January, but at least by that first board meeting in February. So it'll show where those major transfers are, and you know, Mark went ahead and went through and revised this, and there is Indiana code that outlines this piece of it. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget transfer resolution.
We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second?
Mr. Shaw, second. Comments, discussion, questions?
Kyle, when you
Did you
do
get a chance
this,
to look at this?
Yep.
is this gonna be a throughout the year issue, or is this just gonna be at the end of the year cleanup scenario?
Well, it's really designed to be an end-of-the-year cleanup scenario. But one of the things that I mentioned at the last meeting is that if there's additional reports that would be helpful to you to track throughout the year, we can do that. Like, I think it's important for us to all be better educated on where those expenses go.
So my question's really based upon transparency. So if you're doing this throughout the year, all I ask would be, instead of waiting till January, you present this
In the,
as a, you know, because as it is now, I mean, the way you phrased it was, in January, you would present this to us, but I would like to see it just, as you have to do those more major sort of deals, then it would be presented to us.
absolutely. The minor ones is the bigger issue that I get hung up on. And you know, I sent the example today with Jack's
If you have
plow
to
and
move
stuff.
$500,
Okay. Because really, we don't even do a transfer. It's just underspending in some areas,
get
and
that.
then at the end is when we actually do the transfers.
But if,
So,
again, it's at $100,000.
Yeah, oh,
we
well-
didn't budget enough for diesel fuel or whatever.
yep.
But if it's, all of a sudden some major expense came up, that's the only path I'm going down is.
And one of
I
the
don't want this
things,
to be we're just doing it
yeah,
and not telling us till the next January when we.
one of the things I
Clean up
want
the
to
budget.
look at is, because you know, there haven't been many questions about claims this year, but that is, you know, the board approving every expense that we have. And so, you know, if there is a big expense, you know, all of a sudden, it's absolutely going to raise red flags. But I understand that with something like fuel, where it's more of a gradual thing, and we don't have that comparison from one year to another. And to be honest, I think we're going to be better off moving forward, because before, some things weren't necessarily put in the right category or the same categories we currently do. And so if it was categorized incorrectly before, now it's this way, it's going to look like a huge jump, which it really wasn't. It's just in a different area. So,
So really we sit down and we budget, and then you run through the year, and this is really budget reconciliation, right? So it really should happen like once a year. But the other thing is, when you transfer stuff, we should be seeing that in monthly reporting, right?
it's really not transferred until the reconciliation happens. And that's what I
Well, that's
want
what I'm
to,
saying, so,
what I want to do is work on what sort of report can we share with you so that you can see what the current balance in all of those different funds are. Because like I said, I mean, we use over 140 funds. Like, there's a lot, and there's actually probably close to 400 total. We don't use all of those, but, you know, some of it is what can we generate with the software that we have that's going to give you guys the information you need to see where we're maybe expensing more versus where we're expensing less. So, and I
then
think we can do that.
So in our monthly financial report, that's where I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Because what you want is you want a frequency of management time frame, right, that we can make adjustments with that.
Yeah.
If possible, like fuel, like what are you gonna do, right? You're gonna eat that at the end of the year, but
Yeah.
the quicker we can see things and you guys can see things, then, you know, the quicker we can make adjustments to it. So
Yep.
that's where I'd like to see that is like monthly. And then the reconciliation of the end of the year should be, you know, we just gotta reconcile the budget to what we planned versus what it really is,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So,
So the one thing I would also say, I mean, if you're able to come up with something, you know, it's gonna be more helpful if you're kind of looking at it as, where should you be at this time of the year? Because if you're just showing under and over, well, most things are gonna be under, but you could, you know, if you keep going at that rate, it could be a problem.
Right. And that's actually one of the things that Dr. Stevens has been working on, is with those major accounts showing basically the last 2 years, this year, and then the next year, so that we can track what those changes are, good or bad, so that we can help project for the future. Because I don't think that we've really intentionally track those things, and so sometimes that budget is somewhat of a guess rather than an educated guess. It's like, you know, we can see where we've been the last 2 years, where we were this year, so we should be able to better determine. So, you know, I think now that we have our new computerol system has much better reporting options than the previous one did. It generates them themselves instead of us having to, you know, pull a bunch of stuff out and put in our own spreadsheet. So I think, you know, early on in the year, maybe I'll have Darla print some different options and see if any of them meet, you know, what you guys are looking for. And it's pretty easy now to just run that report and include it in the financials moving forward. So.
Why would you wait till the end of the year? Why wouldn't you reconcile at the end of every quarter, so that if, you know, bus fuel's $7 a gallon and you got other things over here that you're under, why wouldn't you move them, instead of trying to do this monumental project at the end of the year? Why wouldn't you do that like a business does at the end of every quarter, and try and get things, you know, within the operating budget, so that we don't have to do tax warrants? You know, I mean, that was one of the goals, was to get away from them, and then, you know, transferring 14% out of education into operations. I mean, how long can you keep doing that? You know, I guess I don't understand why this isn't done at the
most
end
of the time it's done with the business monthly. That's why we have a monthly financial close, right, to see where we're at, and then you make budget adjustments. I mean, it depends on the organization.
But we get, state reporting happens once a year with the budget, state reporting.
That's when it's due to the
Right.
state wants it. What
So
I'm saying is,
reporting, rectifying it once a year, I mean, you do everything in between the year, like
We're
you
not.
mentioned. Well, he's gonna provide a report, right? He said he was gonna provide a report of some sort. He said he'd be willing to, you know, do what he can to do that.
well, the other problem with this thing is, I thought for sure at the last meeting, we were putting the dollar amount in to identify what was a minor and what was a major, and I don't see it.
Well, there was gonna be a definition put in there.
It's not there.
I thought minor was something within an
Okay.
account, and majors going between accounts, but.
Okay, we approve a budget for the entire year. Period. They can't spend more than that. Everything within that education fund, operations fund, from what I understand, tell me if I'm wrong, is they've been doing it for years. Every school has done it, where they've put $100 over here just to make it zero it out. Put $500 here to zero out, because they don't use this, but they use this line item. That's what he's talking about. they're not asking to spend more money. They're asking to spend the same amount of money.
Yeah, it can be more money or less money within accounts. There's two things going on, Robert, here.
Yep.
There's reconciliation, which is required by law to reconcile to the budget. That's an end of year. Then there's your management time frame, where when do we get a picture right where we're off on budget? So I don't know about you guys, but I don't really, you know, there's a lot of, like Kyle said, there's a lot in these budgets, right? To sit there and keep up with that. You know, I kind of read through it, but to keep up with that, all I really want, if you're looking at this, what I'd want from a business is some type of monthly report that says, here's our transfers, right? Or maybe, look, I think Raju, like if you're looking at what you have, the problem is some of these funds lag, right? Like on the income side. But what you typically look is you'd look at a percentage of where you're at as compared, like Kyle's been doing, right? Our income is what'd you say, 38%? And then here we're, you know, at the last of the year, here comes the money. I mean, so there's really two things. It's the reconciliation of the budget, but the other thing is when, like, every month we should know if we're getting off on something, right? Because you want to try to correct,
Well,
right, Raju?
So that's the part that I mean, I think you guys are focusing in on this thing, and this is a nothing, just accounting paperwork thing. Like what we should be paying attention to is what are we high on throughout what are we trending higher than we thought we were going to? It doesn't matter when you do this little transfer thing, do it. I mean, just do it at the end of the year when you know it. Why do it 12 times or 4 times? Because you're just going to be moving it back and forth. But what you do need to keep track of is, are we higher than we thought we were going to be?
And you're right, and then I guess, for lack of a better word, that's exactly what I've been trying to get at is, so we can identify.
And hopefully early in the year,
Right.
if there's a problem, sure.
And adjust the budget for the next year accordingly.
Why do I
If there
want to
are
know
trends.
no transfers monthly is because what happened in the past. And I'm not saying Kyle's going to play that same game, but like what we should be looking at is financial structure, right? To keep a fair playing ground and know where the money's going and where it's being spent. So like that's all I kind of want is information. And I don't think that's too much to ask. Any business, like right? You do that in your business.
Right, but he's not actually making any transfers throughout the year.
That's what I mean. But
They're
if
just
we do, I'd like to
overspending
know
or
about it.
underspending.
That's all I'm saying.
I think it actually helps not making them during the year, so you can actually track that account instead of just keep on putting it in from someplace else, and then all of a sudden it inflates it, so you think you're fine, even though at the end, you ended up spending a whole lot more than you budgeted, but you kept on putting money in there to kind of falsely inflate where you're at on
But
that.
the visibility of those overspends should be monthly where we, like if we can, we want to make adjustments to
Yeah,
that, right?
and
So we don't
and I
end
think,
up-
you know, heck, we spent a lot of money transferring over to that new CompuTrol, and that's one of the reasons, is it can create those. So it's a matter of, you know, I'll bring some examples of some of the things that it can generate, and then you guys pick through them and say, this is exactly what we need this to be able to track where our
And we do a
things go.
monthly financial report, right? So all I'd say is like in there.
Yeah.
If you're wanting transfers, then I would say I kind of like that form you shared from Randy, right? That like if we want yearly transfers, if you need
Yeah.
those transfers,
Nope.
then you ask for approval and we approve the transfers. So I don't think it's too difficult. I just think we're talking about two different things sometimes. I'm wanting visibility, right? And I'm wanting a
Right.
fail-safe on
And I
transfers.
want to see, so we can track, are there trends showing up?
Yeah,
Yeah. I think we're on the same page, we're just talking down different paths.
yep.
Well, what this says to me is you set up an operations fund that's paid for with tax dollars, and you set up, and there's things under Indiana code that can be paid for with operations, with debt service, and with education fund. So if we're not keeping an eye on the operations fund all year long and seeing what's in line and isn't, it's basically saying, well, you don't have to follow the operations budget because we'll just transfer $1 million in at the end of the year. Because there was no appropriation done for the new bus that we ordered. There was no appropriation done for capital projects. And there was no appropriation for doing the house next door. So if we were fixing all that today, we'd be transferring $1 million out of the education fund into the operations fund. That's what this piece of paper says to me, that it's, you're
This-
saying
this
it's
says-
okay to do that.
This one has nothing to do with transferring between education and operations. This one
It
does
doesn't.
not at all apply to that.
Right, but what it is saying is they're gonna keep track of it all year and make one adjustment at the end of the year, so there's,
This is-
where's the accounting to
Or
stay
they're gonna-
within
It's
budget?
all within
The
operations.
operations.
It's not into from anywhere else, though.
Right, but at the end of the day, if this is out of whack, you know,
And the
I
bus was
mean, I
paid
guess
for
you
out of a
weren't in the
GEO
meeting.
bond, which it was written for.
yeah, whatever. I'm done. What-
Well, that's exactly right. That's why I wanna know if we make transfers. This is, look, like you got reconciliation at the end of the year, you have to do that. If we make transfers monthly, then I want that part of the financial, I mean, that's not too hard, right? I don't have time, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I can look at this stuff monthly. I don't have time to look at the books on the school weekly, and I shouldn't have to be honest with you. It's like, but I do want that information. If we transfer during the year, we should know that. I mean, it's this board's the physical status of this school is this board's responsibility. You can't shut that, you know? So, to me, like, I'm okay with the resolution as long as that's part of it, where if we try to do transfers during the year, like, the reconciliation has to be done, right? If we do transfers, then the board, that should be prevented in the monthly meetings, or, I mean, how many meetings do we have a month? At least 2, right? So, I mean, one of the bi-weekly meetings that we have, and then we kinda know where things are, but the other thing is the visibility to know where we're at to budget. I mean, you guys ought to be looking at that now. I mean, are you looking at that every meeting? So, that's the only point I'll make it to.
I do have another question, and Mark's not here. This says that this is to allow for expenditures in 22 and 23, and it says that we're adopting it today. Is this a policy going forward forever, or
No.
just for this year with the budget mess that we got?
Typically, it's approved with the budget when you adopt it. So typically, this, for 2022, it would have been adopted when we did the budget for 2022. And it basically says, here's how we're gonna operate for 2022, and then by the first meeting in February of 2023, that we would bring the transfers for approval. And so, because we hadn't done that, I mean, this is working toward next year too. And that's not really the one I'm most concerned about. It's the 2022 one, but I mean, if that's the problem, take 2023 out and I'll talk next year, about doing that for 2023. So
I just wanted a clarification, and then my other question is, we don't have a treasurer right now. We voluntold Darla. Does this need to wait? Or do we need to name someone else to be the second set of eyes?
May I call?
Oscar, Dennis Otten, somebody.
I'd like to call for a vote, please, if that's possible.
I just asked a question.
I
You're
don't.
out of order.
And I have no problem having outside people look at it. Like, have no problem with having outside. In fact, I have with everything we've done in the last 2 weeks, I've had outside people looking at it.
Right. And that's why I asked the question, I don't want to put this on Darla. What
Well,
do you guys think?
absent, my thing to Kyle is it should probably read financial manager, except we don't have one right now. That's my biggest concern. to
Well,
be honest
and
with you.
typically in years past,
And if we
have
did, maybe
done
we're
that.
not in this situation.
Right, but typically, in all 4 years I've been here, at the January organizational meeting, whoever the business manager is named the corporation treasurer. But that's not the vote that we're in right now, so I'm just asking the question, do you guys want to appoint Oscar? Do you want to appoint, somebody from Dennis Otten's firm? He's got accountants. I mean, do you guys want to pick somebody to review this before? I mean, we could approve it with that caveat, or do you want to hang this on Darla? What do you think?
I would prefer it's someone employed by our district, like someone who works here, because that's who we're going to be working with. We have, Randy Libby is going to help us out with this stuff. Our Dr. Stevens is going to help us out with this stuff. I mean, we have people included who've helped get us this far, and I fully trust them to get us to where we need to be. Darla is identified as our treasurer right now. I was told as a superintendent that I could not be the person who is authorizing these transfers. That's fine. But, I mean, regardless, I'm a part of the conversation. I'm the one bringing other people who are much more knowledgeable than us into that conversation to make sure we do it right. I've also talked to 2 other business managers in the area who are happy to either come over and work with us or work with us over the phone. So, you know, I think we have a vast knowledge of people willing to help us through this process. And so I don't know that we need to hire someone outside to do this, to act as our treasurer.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Brubaker,
I would say approve it. Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hensley,
Yes.
and I'm going to abstain. And I believe that's it, isn't it?
As far as the agenda items, yeah.
Any other discussion items?
So I sent you guys an email earlier today. I'd like to just kind of talk about the property back behind that we had discussed pursuing. We do have one quote that came back, or appraisal came back, that I shared with you guys. And, you know, one of the things, you know, we had a work session, we talked about the GEO bond money. That was on the list for what we were looking at, you know, doing with the GEO bond. We have basically, you know, frozen all of that list until 2024. So I would like to have some feedback from you, because, you know, it's only fair to the owners of that property. If we're waiting till 2024, then, you know, I want to be able to make them aware of that. I don't know that, like, even if the second appraisal came back considerably less than that, I don't know where
It's
we're
not going
finding
to.
that money. Yeah, so.
And I think we should wait. We don't have the money. Next year, even if we get, it'll be 500,000. So we need to wait. We don't have the money. That's my opinion. I think it's pretty sound. Farm ground's not going down.
Well, and we don't have the money to be, I mean, even if it was at what it is, like right now, we don't have that.
And the second appraisal could come in at 6, and now we're splitting the difference, and still it's 500,000, so.
How many acres is it?
37?
But not all of it's farm ground, right?
No, but the average came back at about 12 per acre. So it was right around 450.
Which still surprises me, but it's not very good ground for 12 per acre.
Well, and it is very detailed appraisal, and you know,
I read John's appraisal.
yeah, so.
And John's good.
Yeah, and that's it,
But-
that's it. I mean, it's, everything's at a premium right now.
No,
And so, you know, but even if it was 200,000, I still don't think we have the money to buy it.
yeah, but then you could only do the difference between the two, right? The average between the two?
Yeah.
That's the max we can pay. We can always offer less.
Yeah, but they know what it's worth. So, Tim's not crazy.
Was did you enlist the same 2 appraisers that did this property over here? No?
I was looking for ones that specialize more in land than houses, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I'd say it's not the time.
We hope we're going to get back some of our contingency money, we hope, right? Although, I mean, it depends on how much snow we get this year. But, I mean, that might be a possibility too. So,
That contingency money may end up being put right back in the building, so, which is kind of the plan, so.
I don't want to see that go away. That's the thing. That's a very premium spot for anything we ever want to do in the future, potentially.
You could talk to Mark about an option on it if you want to. I'd be okay with that.
Put your house up. Let's go ahead.
Any other thoughts on it?
Yeah, I like Raju's idea. I mean, the Taylors have made it pretty clear that they would like the school to have it. Maybe we could, get the deal signed and give them a stipend to hold the deal, put an X amount of time on it till, sometime in '24, and then, all we'd be out is whatever that stipend was, if they're willing to do it. Escrow down payment, whatever you wanna call it. And again, I don't know if schools could legally enter into something like that, but it would be a question for Mark.
Yep. I'll talk with Mark tomorrow and see.
That's not a bad idea.
No, and you guys, my opinion on it is like, we probably need to sit down and have a long-term strategic plan that involves that plan and talk about what the use was, because it may be primo spot, but what do you wanna do with it? So I think before we enter any contracts or anything, would have an idea of what we'd do with that property first, right? If I was buying property, I'd probably figure out what I'm gonna do with it before I even worried about buying it. But now we got a cost at least, so you kinda know, that's kinda the premium cost. Whether land's gonna go down, I don't know, right? It's at an all-time high. Interest rates are
They're not making any more of it.
high, buy dirt.
Well, it's the only thing that we would ever invest in that actually pays us back, whether we do anything with it. And the school can always sell it in 10 or 15 years if they don't decide they want to use it.
What's the cash rent value right now?
Yeah, that'd be a question for that gentleman over there.
300 a month?
300?
No, 300 an acre per year.
300 an acre per year. How many acres?
How many acres of
37,
farmland
but-
is there?
35.
Maybe, yeah.
That's an off the cuff, Mike, I'm just saying.
Okay, no, that's a good general idea. I mean, looking at cash.
I think that's similar to what we were getting out at Laketon for that piece.
Some guys will pay you that, some guys will pay you more.
How much is that as farmland, farmable?
About 35, I think, just what, 37 all?
Well, that's the whole
37.
thing.
Huh?
37 acres total?
37
I've
altogether.
never walked it guessing.
But not,
Did we say 35?
I thought the whole thing was 35.
There's a decent amount that I wouldn't plan anything on. I mean, a handful of acres, but most of it would be farmable.
And just for the record, at least the last time I checked, none of that's in the floodplain, so the low area, if we ever get to the point where we wanted to put in some solar panels, that'd be a perfect place for them to get maximum sun, and they wouldn't be obstructing anybody's view or their neighborhood. Anything else?
As I said last time, some of the packages for our outgoing board members did not arrive in time, and the one says that it's possible delay, then a delay, and then it's been relabeled and forwarded for different tracking ID, and now is saying package may be lost. So I will get the other packages to you, and those are the ones that were customized, so I don't know if there's a high demand for Dave Terflinger and Raju Shaw merchandise out there, but somebody somewhere in the United States is showing it off right now, so.
Down in that ditch in Alabama.
You're probably right, so.
It's probably hanging in the restroom at the Colts Stadium, Raju.
I did have these keychains for you guys also, and they have a starfish on them. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story just about the kid going along the sand and tossing starfish in, and someone's like, "Look at all these other ones, and you're not making a difference." And he said, "To that one, I am." And I think one of the things I like about the board members here is they're not looking out for just everybody. It's looking out for the individuals who may not be the most academic person, may have an interesting, interest in mind or goal in mind, that we're trying to meet those. It is about, our, not only just our athletics, but also our performing arts and our visual arts and unified sports and all these things that are reaching and finding a way to include every single one of our students in some way. And so, once again, I know last meeting was supposed to be the last meeting. We got to enjoy each other's company one more time.
If you
but-
call another one, start without
We're gonna have another one just when the items come in, and that's gonna be the only, it's just gonna be Pledge of Allegiance, superintendent comments, that's really what it's gonna be. So,
I do, once again, I know that the job as a board member, it's a little crazy to pursue that, but we do need good people who are willing to put in the time and effort. Even though we don't necessarily agree on everything, I think we keep in mind, we're doing it for the best interest of our kids, and that's the most important thing. So, thank you, Dave and Raju, for, all of the service you've given over this time, and I still expect you to be at events and see in the hallways and things like that. So, thanks again. That's all.
Does that mean we get to come and pound on the podium?
No. The first resolution at the new board or the new board meeting is to get rid of the podium and to eliminate public comment. So that's against state. That's against state law. So maybe we won't be doing that.
I do have one thing I would like to say.
Careful, you may have somebody out there.
I do have one thing I wanted to say because she's here. When I sat down in this seat, I had no idea about specials. And it's been a real learning experience, and I don't have a whole lot of influence with them, but I'm pretty sure the wheels for you, young lady, are greased all the way to heaven for everything that you do every day. Let's give her a hand. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody else has got something to say.
Hold on.
Yeah, you go ahead.
One thing with this budget is I would kind of like us to get serious about like continuous improvement. So I'm gonna like send you a form. I'd kind of like us to do some like corrective preventive action on this thing, and so this doesn't happen again. So a lot of times like we want to move forward, right? Not to get into anything, but I kind of want to know like root cause on this, and then what we're gonna put in place to kind of stay out of this, because I mean, we just had DUAB in, right? And then this, and you can't, like, I don't look at people, I look at process, is what I kind of look at, so that's my comment. And thank you guys for, what a ride, man, over the last 4 years with you guys, right? I mean, and you guys too, but if you look back what we've been through from, coming into basically a financial disaster, I'm just gonna put it forward, right? That's kind of where we were through, people coming in purple and white shirts and COVID mask, and like, man, this has been a ride the last 4 years, and you hit it on the nail. Yeah, it's a little pain in the butt, but like, I always go back and think about why are we doing this? Why are we sitting in these seats? And like our conversation the other day, if we keep the kids in mind, right, that's what this is really about. They are our future. And so I do appreciate you guys. It's been a wild ride. Kyle, you come in here at a time with like a budget, building project coming on and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the two of you. You're going out, and it's just, I kind of was reflecting back today going, wow, if you think about everything we've been through, even in the last 2 years, it's a pretty wild ride. So thank you guys.
I want to echo what he said as well. I have grown over the past 2 years, and a lot of that is to all of you tribute to. So I appreciate all the growth that you've shown me, and I wish you both well in the future. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I got one more thing to say.
Okay.
He handed us a jar of nuts and told us we were nuts for wanting to be on the school board, and I kind of get where he was coming from. But, stepping up from a principal to a superintendent with a building project and a new business manager.
Got a board like us.
Yeah,
He may not have been nuts, maybe he's been stupid.
yeah, I'm thinking you guys need to order about 50-pound bag for him and the central office staff, so.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're done.